Have you ever wondered who was the force behind the transformation of England into a formidable military power in the 14th century? Today we dive into the life and reign of the enigmatic Edward III, a monarch whose influence is still felt in England today. Edward III ascended the throne in 1327 and ruled until his death in 1377. His reign, spanning 5 decades, was marked by significant changes and achievements, not just for the monarchy but also for the nation as a whole. The 14th century was a time of great upheaval and change, and at the heart of it all was Edward III, steering the ship of state with a steady hand. This monarch's reign was not just about maintaining power, it was about transforming England into a military powerhouse, a feat that Edward III achieved with remarkable success. His military prowess was renowned, and his strategies and tactics continue to be studied in military academies to this day. His victories on the battlefield helped to restore royal authority, which had been severely weakened during the reign of his father. But Edward's achievements were not confined to the battlefield. His reign saw important developments in legislation and government, including the evolution of the English Parliament. He was instrumental in shaping the institution as we know it today, ensuring that it became a vital part of the country's governance. Edward III was a monarch who was ahead of his time in many ways. He had the vision to see what England could become and the determination to make it happen. His reign was marked by innovation and change, and his influence extended far beyond his death. But behind the king was a man, a human being with his own hopes, fears, and dreams. To understand Edward III, we must delve into his personal life, his struggles, and his triumphs. Only then can we truly understand the man who was Edward III and the lasting impact he had on England and the world. So, who was this Edward III, and how did he come to be such a transformative figure in England's history? Stay tuned as we unfold the life and times of this remarkable king in the upcoming scenes. Edward's journey to the throne was far from typical. As the son of King Edward II, young Edward was born into a world of privilege and power. Yet, his path to the crown was not a straight one. It was a journey marked by intrigue, betrayal, and a fierce determination to reclaim what was rightfully his. Our story begins when Edward was just a boy of 14. His father, the king, had been deposed by his own mother, Queen Isabella, and her lover, Roger Mortimer. As his father was overthrown, Edward was thrust into the limelight, crowned as the new King of England in a ceremony that was as much about political maneuvering as it was about royal tradition. But the young king was not content to be a puppet in his mother's court. He was determined to rule in his own right. And so he bided his time, learning the ways of the court and the strategies of power. As he grew older, his ambition grew stronger, and his patience paid off. Edward led a successful coup against Mortimer, the de facto ruler of the country, seizing power and beginning his personal reign. This was no ordinary ascension. It was a bold and daring move, a clear statement of Edward's intent to be a strong, decisive leader. He was not just a king by birthright, he was a king by his own making. And so at the tender age of 17, Edward III took the reins of power, stepping out from under his mother's shadow and into the annals of history. It was the dawn of a new era, an era that would be marked by military success, political reform, and the strengthening of royal authority. Thus began the reign of Edward III, an era that would reshape England's future. It was a reign that would see England transformed into a formidable military power, and it all began with a young king's determination to claim his crown. Edward III's reign was marked by conflict, most notably the 100 Years' War. This was a period of intense and prolonged warfare that saw Edward III assert his claim to the French throne, a claim that would have far-reaching implications for both England and France. The seed of this conflict was sown when Edward, in a move that shocked his contemporaries, declared himself the rightful heir to the French throne. This was not a decision taken lightly. Edward was keenly aware of the political and military consequences of such a move. Yet he was driven by a sense of duty, a belief in his own legitimacy, and a desire to secure his place in history. Edward's military strategies during the 100 Years' War were innovative and often daring. He adopted a policy of scorched earth, laying waste to the French countryside to cripple the enemy's resources. He also made effective use of longbowmen in his armies, a decision that would prove decisive in several key battles. One of Edward's most notable victories was the Battle of Crécy in 1346. Here, his force of longbowmen decimated the French knights and proved the effectiveness of this weapon on the battlefield. This victory was a testament to Edward's strategic acumen and his ability to adapt to the changing nature of warfare. Edward's military successes were not limited to the battlefield. He was also a skilled diplomat and politician, leveraging alliances and fostering relationships to strengthen England's position. He understood that war was not just about winning battles, but about winning hearts and minds as well. Yet despite his successes, Edward's reign was not without its challenges. The cost of war was high, both in terms of lives lost and resources expended. Public support for the war waned over time, and Edward faced increasing opposition at home. His later years were marked by international failure and domestic strife, casting a shadow over his earlier achievements. Nevertheless, Edward's military prowess transformed England into a formidable military power. His reign saw the evolution of the English Parliament, important developments in legislation and government, and the establishment of England as a significant player on the international stage. Edward's military prowess turned England into a force to be reckoned with, but his reign was not without its challenges. As we delve deeper into Edward's life and reign in the next scene, we'll explore these challenges and the impact they had on his legacy. As Edward III grew older, his reign was marked by international failure and domestic strife. The later years of his rule were a stark contrast to the early victories and triumphs he had enjoyed. The formidable military power he had built started showing signs of cracks, and the king himself faced personal trials that further compounded his troubles. Edward's issues with his sons were a significant part of his later years. He outlived his eldest son, Edward the Black Prince, a heartbreaking event for any parent. The throne was passed on to his grandson, Richard. But the transition was not without its challenges. The dynamics within the royal family were tense, with power struggles and disagreements marring their relations. Internationally, Edward's reign started to wobble. The territories he had so valiantly fought for and won started slipping from his grasp. The 100 Years' War, which Edward himself had initiated by declaring himself the rightful heir to the French throne, began to take a toll on England's resources. The country's military power was stretched thin, and the loss of territories was a significant blow to Edward's authority. The decline of Edward's health added another layer of complexity to the already challenging situation. As he grew weaker, his ability to manage the affairs of the state diminished. His vision for England, which had once been so clear and ambitious, began to blur with his deteriorating health. Amidst all this, Edward's reign was struck by one of the most devastating events of the Middle Ages, the Black Death. This pandemic swept across Europe, causing unimaginable loss of life and societal upheaval. It was a disaster of epic proportions, and its impact on Edward's reign was profound. The pandemic not only resulted in a massive loss of life, but also led to economic instability, labor shortages, and social unrest. Despite the difficulties and the tumultuous events of his later years, Edward did not let his kingdom crumble. He held on, steering his country through the storm as best as he could. His resilience in the face of adversity demonstrated his commitment to his people and his duty as a king. Despite these struggles, Edward III's legacy was far from tarnished. His reign saw important developments in legislation and government, including the evolution of the English Parliament. Edward's later years may have been marked by failure and strife, but they also bore witness to his steadfastness and his enduring commitment to his kingdom. His legacy therefore remained untarnished, a testament to his strength as a leader and his dedication to his people. Edward III's reign was a turning point in English history. This is a statement that requires no exaggeration. His time on the throne, which stretched over 5 decades, left an indelible mark on England, shaping the nation's future in ways that still resonate today. One of the most significant impacts of Edward's rule was the evolution of the English Parliament. Edward III was instrumental in refining the parliamentary system. He understood the importance of an institution that could mediate between the monarchy and the people, and so he oversaw its transformation into a bicameral body, with a House of Commons and a House of Lords. This set the foundation for the parliamentary democracy that we see in the United Kingdom today. It was a monumental shift, one that changed the course of English governance and lawmaking. Edward III also succeeded in restoring and strengthening royal authority, which had been severely undermined during his father's reign. He was an astute ruler who realized that a strong monarchy was vital for the stability and prosperity of the nation. Edward re-established the monarchy as a formidable power, both in England and on the international stage. This was a crucial step in ensuring the continuity and strength of the English monarchy in the years that followed. But Edward's legacy extended beyond the realms of Parliament and royal authority. His influence on future monarchs was profound. Edward's military successes and his assertion of England's rights and interests set a precedent for future English monarchs. His reign was seen as a golden age, a time when England emerged as a significant military power. Future kings and queens would look back at his reign as a benchmark, a standard to aspire to. Edward III's place in English history is assured. He is remembered as a king who led England out of difficult times and into an era of strength and prosperity. His reign saw England transform from a nation in turmoil into a formidable power. But his legacy is more than just his achievements. It's about the impact he had on the nation, the changes he brought about, and the lasting effects of those changes. Edward III was a king who was both admired and criticized. He was seen as a hero by some and a reckless adventurer by others. But regardless of the differing views, there's no denying the impact he had on England. His reign was a time of significant change, a period that shaped the course of English history. Edward III, a king admired and criticized, left an indelible mark on England. His reign was a turning point, a time that set the stage for the England that we know today, and for that his place in history is forever secured. From a young king thrust onto the throne to a military leader and transformative figure, Edward III's reign was a period of significant change for England. His life and rule, marked by significant milestones, continue to fascinate scholars and history enthusiasts alike. Edward III was crowned king at the tender age of 14 following the deposition of his father, a time of great turmoil and uncertainty. Yet he rose to the occasion, leading a successful coup against his mother and her lover, and began to rule in his own right. This marked the beginning of a reign that would see England transformed into a formidable military power. His military prowess was indeed a defining aspect of his time on the throne. He declared himself the rightful heir to the French throne, setting in motion the events of the Hundred Years' War. This was a time of great conflict, but also of significant military success for England under Edward's leadership. However, his reign was not without its challenges. The later years of his rule were marked by international failure and domestic strife. While he was admired during his time, he was also criticized and even denounced as an irresponsible adventurer. Yet it's important to remember his reign saw important developments in legislation and government, including the evolution of the English Parliament. The legacy of Edward III is complex, yet enduring. He outlived his eldest son, and the throne passed to his grandson, continuing the royal lineage. His reign was a period of significant change and development, laying the groundwork for the England we know today. So the next time you wonder about the forces that shaped England into the nation, it is today. Remember Edward III, the king who turned a kingdom into a formidable military power.